10%. Hello.
Colleagues, good evening, and may I invite Nandipa to flight the agenda? We're still about 1.5 minutes to 6. So this is the agenda.
Good day, Chair. You are muted, Chair. We couldn't hear you.
Am I muted? Muted?
No, Chair, we hear everything you're saying.
Not at the moment. Not at the
You're
moment.
still muted, Chair.
No, we can hear you, Chair.
Yeah,
Yes.
we can hear you. We can hear you fine.
Okay, thank you very much, Nandipa. Please sort out your system. The problem is on your side. Thank you very much, colleagues, for confirming that you can hear me. Please sort it out. Tell me as soon as you have done so that I can start the meeting. Nandipa?
I'm sorted, Chair. Sorry, it was my laptop.
You can hear me now, clearly?
Yes, Chair.
Okay. Okay, I think now it's 6 o'clock. We can start the meeting. Do you have the quorum?
Not yet, Chair.
Not yet. Okay.
Recording in progress.
All right. But I know that some colleagues, there's how many do we need before we form the quorum?
Who?
2 members. Yeah, no, it's bad. Can I step out for a minute and call 1 or 2 to quickly join the meeting? My apologies, colleagues. I don't want to do this. All right. Colleagues, they are joining the meeting. I think it doesn't stop us from starting the meeting because the agenda was approved or has been approved. What I have not added to this agenda items is the deployment, the latest deployment. And I felt that you need a presentation. And so I received it, was it yesterday or the day before yesterday? And for it to come on the agenda, we need to give the department adequate notice to prepare. I thought less than 48 hours or less would not be adequate. In that way, please. Yes, Mr. Murray, please pardon me. I will put it on the agenda for next week. Yes, Mr. Murray?
Yeah, okay, no problem. No, I just want to say that I actually agree with you on that, especially as we know that, budget and the effect on the budget. So we need to know that We know that, our baseline was cut last week by about 700 million rand. So there seems to be an additional nearly 500 million rand. So that will have all these things that we have set and decided and recommended. It is obviously going to affect that to a large extent, and it will obviously add to cost of employees. So there's no doubt about that. And the only concern that I've got, while it is commendable that the Defence Force can step in, for the poor service by the police, but it will affect other parts of the Defence Force based on our budgetary constraints. So they will have to give us a proper brief on that, Chair. Thank you very much.
Yes,
Much appreciated.
Thank you very much. I will call for a presentation. On the budget, yes, I saw a reduction, R500 million reduction, cut from one of the programs. And but overall, we got a net increase. So in other words, the budget went up by over R1 billion. But I'm not preempting any discussion on the matter. We'll call the CFO to come and present the budget, the revised budget in the meeting. I thought I should just put that in case some other people are listening and they think it's the reduction. It's on the budget.
But just keep in mind, Chair, that when they gave us that 1.2 billion rand extra, they said that is due to the cost of employees increase of the bargaining council, the salary increases. So, in other words, that 1.2 billion go directly to the cost of employees, and it means that it will not assist us in, for instance, what we are, extra deployments. So I would have loved to have more money.
Okay.
So, but those are just the consequences. Thank you.
I thought you would say you'll subsidize them.
Would have loved to if we have got the money. I would have loved to.
Okay, now thanks. Colleagues, let's check if there are any apologies. Let me welcome, I saw the Deputy Minister. Deputy Minister, good evening, sir, and welcome.
Chair, good evening.
Thank you very much.
And good evening to members of the Joint Standing Committee.
Thanks, DM. I also see the Chief of Staff, General Ramatswana. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Chairperson, and good evening to all the honorable members.
Thanks. And there is the Brigadier General Zoleka, who, sorry. Sorry, the Chief of Reserve. The Chief of Reserve is also in the meeting. Chief of Reserves, good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Oh, okay. I thought that was the chief. Is the chief in the meeting?
Chairperson, we have got, I am with General Niabu, the one that just greeted the chairperson now and honorable members. The Chief Defense Reserve was given a one-year contract, and his contract has lapsed. So he is not with us today. And it is myself, General Niabu, and let me say greetings to the DM. Thank you very much, Chair.
Oh, General, how do we explain it? Because if you look at the items, it's for example, item number 4. We wanted him to present his vision as the new chief reserve force. And we are saying he was appointed for a year, and we have not met him. Have we, colleagues? And no greeting,
nothing.
or no farewell.
Chairperson, if I can,
Please come in.
with your permission, Chair, if I can come in. What we have done is that we will be covering the serial number 4 in our presentation. What has happened is that we have collapsed serial number 4 to serial number 3. So it is one presentation. You will see, Chair, at the end, we are going to be presenting a slide that talk exactly to serial number 4. Thank you very much, sir.
I'm not too sure, General, if someone other than a newly appointed chief can tackle item number 4.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No.
I don't. It basically it was us meeting with the chief for the first time to discuss his future plans and understanding the challenges they are. And now he came and left. Maybe the DM can assist. I know you are competent. Your team, General Ramatwana, is competent to deal with item number 4. So item number 3. But it's item number 4 that I'm not quite certain that your team will be competent to handle it.
Yes. May I?
Okay, come, Mr. Murray.
I want to fully agree with you, Chair. I recall that we have specifically said that we want to meet with the new chief of the SA Reserve Force, and that we want to talk to him about his vision and the way forward, how we see it. Now, while I appreciate everything that the Chief of Staff is doing and his staff, but this is not what we have requested, and it is incredibly important that we speak to him, because leadership in the Reserve Force is going to be crucial important. Then secondly, we know that 2 hours ago, we have received the last update of the presentation for tonight. Now, we've got a standing arrangement for when we need the presentation so that we can properly prepare ourselves. I mean, we cannot be a rubber stamp for any presentation, that we must just accept it and because it has been presented to us. And I mean, we are getting near to the end of our term and the 6th Parliament. So I don't want to see it'll be a sad day if we are taken for granted and we must just rubber stamp. So I mean, we have the other day we have sent back Department of Military Veterans because they did not submit their presentation at the prerequisite time, and we said, sorry, go back, do it over, do it properly, and the Reserve Force is a major important contributor to our defense preparedness and readiness. So we cannot play second fiddle with the Reserve Force. So we have to do it properly prepared, so that we can properly interrogate this. Whilst all of these things might not have been implemented by the end of this term, but it's going to be very important for the next Parliament in terms of our legacy report and preparations going forward. So that's my view. I'm obviously not happy, as you can pick up, about how we were treated. This is not the way that we have requested this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. General, do you want to comment on the late submission of your presentation?
Chair, before he does, now come in briefly, please.
Yes, sorry, Mr. Raider, please come in. My apologies, I did not see your hand.
No, no problem at all, Chair. Thank you very much for indulging me. Just to make the point, so the National Council of Provinces was involved in a debate which only ended this evening after 5:30. And so I haven't even had a chance to open an email that may or may not have an updated presentation in it. So it really doesn't help us to do our work if things are not submitted timeously. And we are a joint committee, and that joint aspect does create a different dynamic. Sometimes when we have committees of only one house, there's only one dynamic to take into account. But as the two houses are joined in this meeting, it does make it logistically quite difficult to manage.
Yes. Okay. General, do you want to comment?
Chairperson, thank you very much for the opportunity. And I need to say that to reassure again, honorable members, that we have got so much respect to this committee. If there is anything that strengthens us in the way that we conduct our business as the DoD, as the Department of Defense, it is our continued interaction with this committee. And I want to apologize unreservedly and at the same time to say that, and without making excuses, I don't know where the fault could have lied. We have made a submission last week for this presentation. And when we made a submission, what happened, something that I want to accept and to own up and to agree on it, is the fact that there was a certain slide, and it is the slide about the future, where there were two things that were added onto it. And those two additions in that same slide necessitated that we resubmit, so that honorable members must not see that slide with something that has come in that is new. Actually, we could have allowed the presentation without making a resubmission. And when we get to that slide, we could have re-emphasized the point. But I think we had colleagues who felt that let us rather submit instead of the honorable members having to see it for the first time. So we submitted last week, Chair, and the two changes, they are not changes, it was just additions on that same slide. And I want to say our sincere apologies. We've got so much respect for this committee. And as each time we meet with this committee, we are being strengthened by this committee too. And this committee also enables us to do our work in the manner that we are supposed to do it. I thank you, Chairperson. Our apology once again.
No, thank you very much, General. I think the apology is accepted. The first time we received it, it was on Monday. That's the first presentation. And I'm looking at my emails, and the updated presentation was today, this afternoon. It's fine, but the General says they had wanted that this information must land on our table as of last week, but unfortunately there was a delay in between. Maybe let's accept that as one of the things that happen when in the course of working towards fulfilling our mandates. We'll just leave it at that for now. And but let's GDM is item number 4. We don't want to be unfair to the general or the generals, especially the chief of staff. they've prepared for that item number 4, but it would be the presentation that we have been receiving, of course, updated, but it doesn't speak to what we wanted, basically to engage with the new chief, share his or her views, understand where he wants to take the reserve force, and understand whether these challenges from inside and what his expectations are, and as part of his future plans. That was the idea. But please just talk to the term of 1 year, that contract of 1 year. It's very rare that you'll get a person appointed for 1 year, and what is 1 year in an organization like this? What would you achieve within 12 months? Over to you, TM.
Honorable Chair, honorable members, the inquiry you are raising is appropriate, and the accurate information around that should be provided to the oversight, because my office was also informed that the Chief of the South African Reserves is not in office because his term had expired when I attended the Reserve Force Indaba about 2 weeks ago. My assumption was, of course, that the Chief of the South African Reserves term of office was long enough for the chief to be able to make the necessary impact on the challenges of this community, because you would remember that the former Chief of the South African Reserves, General Anderson, had been in office for a very long time. And I assumed that because there is no age limitation to the responsibilities of the Chief of the South African Reserves, it would be an incumbent who is going to be as much around as the former. The arrangement that I think should also be made clear is that the Chief of the South African Reserves is not a full-time office responsibility. The reserves business is taken care of by reserve directors, and we have the director of South African Reserves, which is General Niabo. And of course, you've got directors in all of the arms of service. But the Chief of the South African Reserves oversees the work of these directors of the reserves in the different communities of the arms of service. So what I'm saying is that accurate information around the decision on the Chief of the Reserves will have to be provided. The Chief of the Reserves is appointed, of course, by the Minister on the basis of the recommendation of the Chief of the Defense Force. And the South African National Chief, the South African National Defense Force Chief, his office would, the Chief of Staff is in the meeting. His office must provide clarity around this matter, because it would be his office that guided the minister in relation to the decision on the appointment. My apology, Chair. My sincere apology. I left my phone off. The second point, Chair, I was going to raise with respect to the issues members want clarity around on the agenda. We have item 4, which is the future plans of the Chief of the South African Reserves. In the engagements behind today's agenda, I am not sure how the department explained things around the reserves. And why I am raising this is that the future plans of the reserves is what the Reserve Force Indaba process is seeking to thresh out and to come up with a clear perspective, not actually a perspective, a vision of how the future system should function as far as our reserves are concerned. And the Indaba 2 of the reserves, of the new Reserve Force system, has advanced dialogue around a number of areas that were identified for detailed and closer interrogation. And I thought that in this meeting, it is that product which the Indaba 2 of the Reserve Force system that was going to be shared, because beyond what the deliberations of Indaba 2 were able to produce, there wouldn't, in my understanding, be any other product that would have been shared with the oversight by the Chief of the Reserves. It is for that reason that the intervention by the Chief of Staff, when he says they have joined item 3 and 4 in their presentation as to be one input, it is for that reason that I thought that it is a helpful explanation, because I was not foreseeing us having another presentation after the presentation on item 3. Chair and honorable members, I submit. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. Maybe what is the protocol around the appointment of or designation someone as Chief of Reserve Force? I thought whoever is appointed, he or she is appointed for a term that is aligned to the term of the chief of the Defence Force, and that when the term of office of the Chief of the Southern Defence Force ends, the term of the Chief of Reserves ends at the same time or around the same time. The idea was to try and align the two. I don't know what the arrangement is. And Chief of Staff, can you just talk to that? I'll come back to Marie.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. That, Chairperson, would make sense to say that the term of the current chief would go in line with the term of the Chief of Defence Reserves. However, it is not always the case. Just to give you an example, we have had General Anderson as the Chief of Defence Reserves for quite some time. So I think he moved from the previous chiefs of the Defence Forces till the date that he went on retirement. So I think, and the truth in that as well, Chair, is because the Chief of the Defence Reserve, yes, he does not cost the defense that much, because he is called in and he come in at some other days, etc., etc. But what has happened, Chairperson, I must align myself with what the DMF said to say that let us rather, Chair, with your permission, that we write a letter to the committee and give an explanation to say the Chief of the Defence Reserve was appointed for a term of 1 year. And this followed the following logical thinking around it. And I think that will be the best, that we write to the committee and inform them on that.
Okay. Thank you very much. General, Mr. Murray?
Thank you, Chair. Something is very strange to me. I find it incredibly strange. I know for a fact that General Anderson's term was directly related and coupled with that of General Choki. And it was his choice. Obviously, he recommended that, and then he was appointed. Now, it was obviously expected that the new chief, and we have would appoint or recommend his preference for a chief of reserves, and make that recommendation to the minister. Now, when we heard that that a chief of reserve has been appointed, it was never disclosed to us that this is a temporary appointment, that this is an acting appointment, and that it's only a 1-year contract. So I asked myself, what was the purpose of appointing a chief of reserve for 1 year, and whether we have received value for money? We have only now seen that there was a Reserve Force Indaba, and so he had no impact, no effect on that. So we actually seems like we don't need a chief of reserve forces, which I do not agree with, but it seems like that is the case. Now, whilst I respect the chief of staff very much, and I've got a lot of respect for him personally, but this is not about his position. This is about the South African Reserve Force and the visions of the chief of the SA Reserve Force. Now, they can present together, but if this is just a fait accompli, that when the next chief of reserve comes, he has no choice, but he has to do as the boss is telling them, then we are on the wrong pathway. Then clearly it's a vision of do as I tell you and don't do as you know the best is. But then my opinion is then we don't need a chief of reserve force. Then we can do without a chief of reserve force, and we can cut that cost from cost of employees as well. I do not like, and I hear what the deputy minister has said, but again, that implies that we are taken for granted, sir, with the greatest of respect. And it seems like you and General Ramatachwane is now covering for each other, and that is not acceptable. We have had a wonderful time in this sixth parliament, but this is not the way that we need to end this term. I'm deeply disappointed, and I am not so convinced that there's proper application of mind that has gone into this. Maybe we need to hear from the chief of the South African National Defence Force what is his vision on the role of the chief of the Reserve Force, whether he agrees with the important role of that, or whether he feels that the chief of staff can act as the chief of Reserve Force. The Reserve Force is playing a too big role in the defence capabilities and readiness of this country. With this deployment letter that we have just received, we know that the Reserve Force will again has to play an incredible important role, because we know that we do not have an additional 3,300 times 3 from the regular force available for that purposes. So I do not know what the objective is if we do it in this fashion, with the greatest of respect. But this is enormously disappointed, General. Really, really, really. Thank you.
All right. I don't think we should say they're taking us for granted, Mr. Murray. They're saying that they would write to us explaining the circumstances around appointing the chief for a period of 1 year, what necessitated that, and what are their plans going forward, because the position must be filled. So maybe we should not discuss it. We must wait until that time when they write to us. And if after reading their correspondence, we feel that they must come and talk to us or present it so that they can answer questions, we will do so. I'm sure they're not going to say no to our request. They've never said no. I thought that was that. All we can say is that all of us, we did not know that he was appointed for a period of 1 year. We thought he was going to be with us for some time because we're accustomed to a chief of reserves serving a longer period. But this time around, it was not so. Some other considerations were taken into account to have a 1 year period. And maybe the next question we'll ask when they come to do a presentation, maybe the minister, is when is this position going to be filled? And because it's got to be filled by, we've expressed this before. And unfortunately, it was just for 1 year. Maybe let's leave it at that for now and allow them to present. But would have loved that when the Indaba 2 took place, the chief would have been appointed so that he also gives his or her input into the process. Because the product of Indaba would be something that he or she would have to drive going forward, was going to guide his or her direction going forward. But unfortunately, it did not happen. Maybe let's leave it at that and then allow the chief of staff to give us his remarks and then call General Zodegani to take us through the presentation. Chief of Staff.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thanks, honorable members. Let me greet once again the Deputy Minister of Defense. Chairperson, as you already said, I am with Brigadier General Niabo, who will be taking us through the presentation. And we're going to be presenting exactly what has been stated as the agenda item on serial number 3. We have had the Chairperson, the Reserve Force Indaba, on the 25th and the 26th of October. And the purpose of the Reserve Force Indaba, this was Reserve Force Indaba 2, was obviously to take stock of the progress that had been made on the strategic resolutions that came out from that first Reserve Force Indaba. And beyond that, we were looking at what is the current status of the Reserve Force, and then to look at into the future, and that was to look at the 4 areas in which the new Reserve Force system has to focus on. And thereafter, upon conclusion of the work session, there were decisions that guided the meeting, and that was to say that there are a lot of issues, and those issues are the current issues, the SEs, and those issues we need to deal with them in a workshop mode in preparation of Reserve Force Indaba 3. And so, Chairperson, let me, without waste any further time, allow Brigadier General Niabo to do the presentation. General Niabo, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, COS.
Good evening, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, you are, General.
Good evening, Honorable Deputy Minister of Defence Force and Military Veterans, Honorable Thabang Makwetla. Good evening, Honorable Chairperson, Mr. Cyril Baba, and the members of the Joint Standing Committee, and the Chief of Staff of the South African National Defence Force, Lieutenant General Ramatwan. I'm Brigadier General Zolekani Abomana, Director Defence Reserves, and I will be presenting to the committee today the status of the SANDF Reserve and what we anticipate to be the future of the reserves. This is the aim of my presentation: provide feedback to the committee on the Defence Reserve Force Indaba 2 and the future focus for the South African National Defence Force Reserves. These will be my core points and the content of my presentation. This is the background to the presentation. We had a Reserve Force Indaba that the Deputy Minister resided on the period 25 to 26 October, where we discussed the role of the reserves as defined in the Defence Review of 2015, that of augmenting the regular force when they're in operations, deployed, and to make up for structural deficiencies in the department. They also form as part of the standing search military force capability when we have operations, especially internally. They provide expansion capability. They also provide specialist skill by means of pools of specialists that the Army has and some few engineers that the Air Force has. They enhance the relationship between the defense and public and private partnerships that we've had in the past with departments like Telkom, PRASA, and Transnet. The business case of the reserves, as we have been saying in the past, is that the reserve force members are cheaper to utilize as we don't have to plan or budget for their pensions. For instance, in all the Operation Corona, which is safeguarding the borders, the reserve force have the 40% input because all those deployments, they constitute 40% of the reserves, but the Army only spends 7.6 of their budget on the item 10, that is pays the salaries of the reserves. So it's cheaper to have, and we only spend on them when they're on call up. When they are not, there are no funds that the department spends on the reserves. It has been shown by different operations in the past that the reserves continue and are making a significant contribution to the development of the department by providing the specialist skills. And in all the operations, if we look at the statistics, there's no single operation or deployment that the department can undertake without being augmented by the reserves. Also, where there are structural deficiencies in many departments, as is the case, reserve force members are called up to provide the services that are required by the different environment, but the structures are not allowing for this to happen. So we'll call up the reserves to supplement the regular force members for our day-to-day business. The matters that are affecting the business case of the reserves is the current funding regime that we have in the department. We're struggling with the cost of employment, where we incur budget deficit every financial year because the funds that we get given to pay employees is less than the number of people that we have to pay. The reserve force wages forms part of that item 10, so this adversely impacts the utilization of the reserves. As we have said previously when we presented to the committee, there is an urgent need to rejuvenate the reserve force component. They have just becoming an aging force. The average age has risen in the past 5 years to 42 to now between 45 and 47. And the reason for this is because we have not had any reserve recruitment in the past 5 to 6 years because also of item 10 and cost of employment. So the component continues to grow, and without an injection, reserve force component will end up ceasing to exist, and this will have an adverse impact on the department because we cannot operate without being augmented by the reserves. The item 10, which is a human resource item that we use to pay both the salaries of reserve force members and those of regular force members for the reserve from April 2022 to 31st of January 2023 was 2,269,849,351. As I've already explained, the last point speaks to the business case of the reserves, that there are no hidden costs when it comes to spending funds on the reserves, as we only pay them when they are called up. and we don't have to budget for their pension. This is a continued feedback from Reserve Force Indaba 2, where we had an action list that emanated from the first Indaba that we had in September of 2021. And these are the strategic aspects that we discussed. There was a proposal that to tidy up the administration of the reserves, we should have 36 months contract for the reserves. This does not mean that when we have a 36 months contract, we'll have to call up members continuously 30 to 31 days of that 36 months. You will stipulate on the contract based on the budget and your plans how many days the members will be called up. For instance, in the Army, Chief Army took a decision that a certain percentage, if not all Reserve Force members, should be at least called up for 180 days a year to make up for continuation training, development, and utilization. Because of the reduction that we had last year, 25% reduction, where we reduced the Reserve Force mandates from 2.6 to 1.9. So there had to be cuts in how the Reserve Force were called up and utilized in most services. Some services have implemented this 36 months call-up contract, and the other services are in the process of putting it in place. There was a need to review the updated Reserve Force service system, as some services felt that some of the aspects in the Reserve Force service system they cannot implement because of budget constraints. This process is ongoing. We're busy with it. To finalize the One Force policy, there was a problem in the department that members felt that the One Force policy, even though is mentioned in the defense review and the military strategy, is not properly defined. So this leads to inconsistent implementation of it, and at times what is deemed to be unfair. The division Chief Defense Reserves did write the problem statement when it comes to One Force policy. It was submitted to the Office of the Chief of Staff of the South African National Defence Force to be discussed with the Chief of the Services, who are the ones who are commanding the reserve, so that we have a common understanding of what the One Force concept or policy is, and the implementation is consistent across the department. To design a Reserve Force strategy in line with the military strategy, this we have done as the division. Plan and deploy additional 7 companies for Operation Corona. As we all know that our borders are always notorious for being porous. And we were told that in order for them to be properly secured, we need 22 companies. And at the time we had 15 companies. So there was a suggestion that maybe the additional 7 companies should come from the Reserve Force component. But with the reduction in mandates and the problems that will continue to experience with the cost of employment and item 10, this could not be achieved. There was an additional of 1 company. Now we have 6 companies in Operation Corona, but this one, if you look at the current financial situation in the department, is not achievable. We don't foresee that we can have an additional of 7 companies from the Reserve Force component only. Provide details for the development and implementation of the Zanzi Home Guard. The Army had 2 companies in General Border Regiment, which is the Reserve Force unit in Mpumalanga, where they trained them and piloted the project in order for implementation, most probably in the next financial year. Consider the implementation of a new feeder system for reserves. This we have discussed with Chief of Human Resource. They have written a letter to National Treasury to revert back to the 2.6 mandates and do away with the 25% reduction, because this did not work for the department. The commitments that the reserve said to amplify the regular force members were more. Almost all services overspent in their Reserve Force mandates, even though the 2.6, reverting to 2.6 will not really assist with a second stream of recruitment that will require in order for us to rejuvenate the Reserve Force component, but it will at least make up for continuation training. But Chief Human Resource also agrees that there is a need to have a second stream of recruitment for the reserve, even though we have not decided on the percentage. Hopefully, this can be achievable in the next financial year, that we can have an intake, because that's the only way we can rejuvenate the component, by injecting young blood. finalized design of force design, military regions and nodal points. There was one pilot in Western Cape as Fort Kapa, and there's also one unit in KZN, but they're still in planning session for other provinces. Tactical aspects, these were aspects that were identified from a Reserve Force Indaba. One, this is continuous because we were always told that we have plus minus 7,500 Reserve Force members that we have not called up. But in 2021, in July for the uprisings, when we wanted to call up all our Reserve Force members, some of these members, we could not find the number that we were told we had. So we decided that we must clean up the system so that we know exactly the number of Reserve Force members we have, those we have called up, even those we have not. This is an ongoing process. We are struggling with data integrity with SITA, and some of the business processes of the system is that we can't just remove people. We have to have their death certificate, which is not an easy process because you cannot get a person's death certificate if you are not related to them. It's a legal issue, and also the business processes of the systems are making it a bit difficult to do this, but we are continuing to do it. Where we have taken a decision that was maybe Reserve Force members who have not been called up for at least 5 years must be moved to National Archive, as they might not longer be interested or not even be available for call-ups. The concept of admin code, this was so that we have clarity as to what our Reserve Force members are actually called up, because we realize that most of the reserves, they will be placed in admin code, and it will seem like we are calling up so many Reserve Force members for admin, even though some of them were for deployment and operations. We are given code so that now we have accuracy when we report as to what the member of the reserve is called for. The University Reserve Training Program, all services agree that this program assisted them with rejuvenation and also by providing specialized skills to the reserve, because these members are graduate, but it was also halted by the financial situation of the department, because when you recruit university graduates, you must take them through training, and you must also call them up in certain intervals throughout the year to offer continuation training. So with the reduction in main days, it halted this process, even though all services agree that it is a process that was working for the department to rejuvenate and also professionalize the Reserve Force component. So far, we have appointed 136 members. We have not had any new training or plans because of budget in the last 2 years. The leader group development is also adversely affected by the budget. We have not had any Reserve Force members taken through either senior staff course or the strategic defense program. Because when you call up Reserve Force members for courses, these courses are 12 months, then it will require continuous utilization. And most services do not have a budget for this, because then it will mean that they will have to be paid to those members Reserve Force wages for continuous 12 months while they are on course. We continue to reskill the reserves together with Project Kubatlala that is now progressing into production brigade. We have had 3 courses in the Eastern Cape where Reserve Force members were trained on construction, plumbing, and water purification. We foresee that now that DBW will give back the task of managing infrastructure to the department, and Works Formation has no capacity. We have a database of all these Reserve Force members that we have reskilled in construction and other skills that have to do with matters of defense works. So they will utilize these reserves if there is a requirement. The Reserve Force Council, currently there is no Reserve Force Council. The minister gave them an extension from December to June that ended 6 months extension that ended end of June. As to what the future of the Reserve Force Council will be, we will hear from the minister once she has applied her mind. The policy updates, this is a continuous process. We are participating in the general regulations revision so that we formulate an overarching policy for the Reserve Force administration. In the past, there were no specific policies for reserves. All the policies that were applicable to regular force members were also utilized for the reserves. Where there was an exclusion, it will be stated excluding the reserves. But most services have indicated the need to have an overarching policy for the reserves so that how they are administered is consistent across the department. We've started the process. We are attending the quarterly policy board meetings as a policy formulation process. It's a bit lengthy in the department. Utilization of the reserves. SAMS has indicated the need to recruit doctors for SAMS where we are lacking, especially specialists, but this also has been adversely impacted by the budget because specialists are costly, and SAMS also struggle with their reserve force budget for reserve force main days because they also use reserves as guards. So they will require additional item 10 in order for them to continue recruiting doctors who are specialists. The Air Force as well, they've halted the revitalization of the reserve air squadrons also because of the budget. Air Force has had to reduce their call-up mandates for the reserves from 30-31 to at times 15, either 10 or 20, because they do not have sufficient budget for reserve force wages. So they've halted the revitalization of air squadrons as well. Implementation of unit changes. The Army has implemented it. They're in their final stages of gazetting it, even though some of the names changes have been implemented in the Army. Consider changing the name of Defense Provincial Liaison Council. This we have changed. We now call them Defense Reserve Support Board, where we partner with public companies and sometimes private to reskill the reserves, and if possible, seek alternative employment for them, because at times some of the reserve force members are not called up because of budget. So this is what Chief Defense Reserve has been doing over the years. The ministerial task team that was initiated by the previous minister indicated that the administration of reserves leaves the reserve force members vulnerable to exploitation and abuse because there were cases and there was a board of inquiry. So we instructed to come up with ways to mitigate this. We wrote to all services to say that there should be call-up committees so that the call-up of members should not be left to individuals where there will be allegations of exploitation and abuse. This was effected by the services. This is the direction that we got from the minister when it comes to the reserves, that the current reserve force service system must be reviewed to make way for modern and fit purpose for the reserve force to fit in the current circumstances and our current unique requirements. We also, in our Reserve Force Indaba 2, we had Mr. Heitman as a guest speaker, who also reiterated some of the things that were said by the minister and also some of the things that we are already doing as the division, because one of the things he suggested was that maybe we need to take the reserves to the people and educate them, the public, about the reserves so that we get the support. The division is already doing this. We have provincial offices in all provinces. When there are shows or wrestling or any activities that the Defense Force can participate in, our provincial offices go there and educate people about the reserves, and we have stands where people will come and we will be informed that this is the Reserve Force and this is what the reserves are doing as part of the Defense Force. So already this we are doing. The minister also directed that we should have a follow-up work session, the deputy minister then in Indaba, in early 2024 to convince some of the things that we discussed when we had the second Indaba, because there were still some of the things that we have to finalize, especially when it comes to policies, and especially those policies that are affected by the budget. The strategic direction from the Chief of Staff provided insight into the strategic trajectory of the Defense Force after the recent work session. The South African National Defense Force embarked on a journey to greatness to restore the status of the department and the reserves are included in this program. This is a broader strategic plan of the department where the reserves are included as well. Director reserves of the services and the division must identify the gaps in the current system that we have of the reserves to enhance the system. The increased requirement from the South Africans that the department must assist internally for the protection of power station, combat illegal mining, assistance with disaster management, and all the other operations that are internally that the department is called upon to assist the police will require focus on the force design and how reserve force members are being utilized. And this can be addressed by the four identified capabilities and systems. These are the systems that we have identified that maybe we must shape our reserve force members into. The conventional reserve function that provides the search capability, as this is also stated in the defense review, the immediate deployable capability that will supplement the rapid deployment capability that will be formed out of regular force members, the Mzansi Home Guard, that will provide intelligence to the borders and also assist with having reserve force members that will be familiar with the community that they will be operating on. The specialist capability, like the pool of specialists that we have in the Army, the aviation engineers that the Air Force used to have, the doctors at SAMS, and the marine pilots in the Navy. The aging force component of the reserve, it requires that we do recruit young members that can provide injection into the system, but all this will exert more pressure to the cost of employment. Already we have a deficit when it comes to cost of employment. So if we have to recruit more reserve force members, that means more reserve force wages. That forms part of the item 10 as well. In order for us to be able to provide skills to all the four capabilities of the reserves, we will have to train them. In this regard, the department must look for additional ways to fund the training and development of utilizing the existing possible SITA funding capabilities. This we already do. When we do reskilling for the reserves, we approach at times SITAs and MASETAs in the provincial offices, and they do assist with paying for the reskilling and training of the reserves. This is already happening. Effective management of service condition and service benefits by implementing advanced enablers and mechanisms to effect this requirement, and overarching instruction for the reserves giving direction for the management of the following, to mention but a few: the medical benefits. This was discussed on Indaba 2. It's also going to be presented to the MCC so that we get a decision. The leave, we're already doing this. The reserve force leave, in the past, it was done manually, and this was identified as a risk. We've submitted business specific requirement. Now it's going to be automated, just like the one of the regular force members. The funeral and life insurances, we've had problems with GLIS because some reserve force members are not called up for the whole month continuously. They'll be called up for 10 days or 15 days. So the problem was that in the last 15 days that they are not caught up, should something happen, the policy will not pay. We intervened with GLIS that even if a member is called up for 10 to 15 days, they will pay for the other days that they are not called up. So whether the policy pays or not should not be dependent on whether the member was on call up or not. If the member has contributed, then they should be able to claim whether they were called up or not, and the insurance agreed. Call-up administration, this we've done already because there were problems that were picked up by the Auditor General, but this was not because of processes, it was just human error. People were not doing what they were supposed to be doing, and Chief Defence Reserves has written now the instruction that clearly spells out everything that has to be done. So hopefully this will resolve the matter. This is the mandate of the division, that we provide strategic direction to the rest of the department on all the issues pertaining to the reserve We also confirmed the strategic purpose of the reserve, that of augmenting the regular force members. We've also stated the business case of the reserves, that they are cheaper than regular force members. That is why some countries in peacetime, they will have 60% reserves and only 40% regulars. In our country, our reserve force members, it's very modest because the international norm is that they will have 40 to 60% reserve force members. In our country, it's only 19%, but still, because of our financial situation, we are struggling to maintain the 19% that we have, even though the effort that they put in augmenting the regulars is greater than the amount that they are. The immediate deployable capability to supplement the regulars, this is part of the journey to greatness. Mzansi Home Guard, the test pilot has been done in Mpumalanga, in General Border Regiment, ready for rollout, possibly in the next year. Specialist capability still exists in the Army through pool of specialists, even though the Air Force had to put hold on their aviation engineers because currently they cannot afford it. Fortunately, both CHR and Chief Defense Reserves agreed that there is a need to rejuvenate this component. We might have a second stream of reserve recruitment in the next year. The final decision will be made hopefully before the end of this year. To manage the limitation on the man days, because every time there's a reduction in man days, the service and division overspend because the requirement to utilize the reserve is there and it increases even though the man days are reducing. These are the future plans that the department has for the reserves. We understand that the financial situation of the country and that of the department might not change in the near future. However, something should be done because there is a requirement to utilize more reserves. Also, with the upcoming operations, Chief Army has already said that he foresees that 50 up or even 60% of the members that will be utilizing those operations will be reserve force members. So this means something has to be done to assist the department with the COE because the reserve force wages also comes from the COE. There are now more internal operations where the department is called up to assist to maintain internal stability and assist the staff. So this requires assistance with the cost of employment. As we have an issue with it in the department, we incur deficit every financial year. The plans that we have is to develop the force systems that are required for reserve force, and these will be implications, and these implications are also stated out in the journey to greatness, which is a greater strategic plan for the department to have the conventional reserve function, the immediate deployable capability that will be used together with the rapid deployable capability of the regular force members, the Mzansi Home Guard, as I have stated, with the 2 companies that were piloted in General Regiment Border in Mpumalanga, the specialist capability that is already in place in the Army, and to a limited extent in other services because of affordability. Planning and development of the direct recruitment for separate reserve force members. This is the second stream that I've been talking about, that the only way we would be able to rejuvenate the reserve force component is by recruiting, and this has not happened in the last 5 to 6 years. Continuing with the future plans, these are the implications. Definitely, if we utilize more reserve force members, there will be an increase in the reserve force wages. This means that we're exerting more pressure to the cost of employment, and the irregular expenditure on cost of employment might also increase as a result of this. It will also definitely increase the 1.9 main days that were reduced, but fortunately, CHR has already submitted to the National Treasury to revert back to 2.6 that we were initially, but I have not had the response. Developmental and specialized training from Mzansi Home Guard for what they will be performing and providing to the Operation Corona. Planning and development of the separate intake requires additional funding. This is what I've already said, that if we're given any target or any number to recruit next year, it will mean that there will be more money because we have to take members through basic military training, and then they will have to get the functional training after that, depending on whatever corps they will be forming part of. Also, when we have to reserve force members, even if you don't employ them full time, they will have to be called up from time to time for continuation training. Because with these operations that we are ordered to do at short notice, even though there can be additional funding for them, but in order for reserve force members to remain combat ready, they should be called up from time to time for continuation training, because when we have to utilize them, we can't be training them when we have to utilize. So that is why maybe every 3 months or 6 months, they will be called up for continuation training so that by the time they have to be employed, they are combat ready. All these that I have stated, definitely they're going to exert more pressure on the cost of employment. And already the department is incurring a deficit on the cost of employment. Every financial year, the Defence Force cost of employment increases the deficit. So with all these plans, the situation is going to even be worse than it was before. In closing, I just mentioned all the operations that the department has been part of, and all of these operations, there's not even a single one where regular force members could be deployed without being augmented by the reserve. So it states clearly that this is the component that we should continue nurturing, because we don't foresee that the department will be able to operate without it, not only in operations, also in different environments, because of the structural deficiencies that we incur. Thank you. That brings my presentation to a close. Now I can open it up for discussions.
Thank you very much. COS, do you want to make a concluding remark?
Chairperson, thank you very much. That is the presentation. We will come in during the discussion. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Chief of Staff. Colleagues, this is the opportunity now for discussion. And there's two hands. It's Mare and Reda. Honorable Mare.
So,
Thank you, Chair.
when we played an integral African
Thank you, Chair.
continent. Still on the Better Africa and the world as a positioning, messaging, conflict resolution, which speaks to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I want to start right in the beginning. I see the background has been given.
Please take down sorry, please take down the presentation.
Yeah, just from the beginning, I see that on that first page, they started by referring to the 2015 Defence Review, to use that as a basis, or I get the impression that they use that as a basis for their discussions and the presentations. But obviously, we know that the Minister of Defence has already given instructions that the 2015 Defence Review is to a certain extent irrelevant, and that a new Defence Review must be developed very urgently. So I was just wondering if they are based it on the 2015 Defence Review, something that we all know is not relevant, is outdated, whether that was the best option to start off by using the 2015 Defence Review. Then on the next page, they refer to the Reserve Force as proved to be cost-effective, providing plus 40% of the 14 companies for Ops Corona. I was under the impression that we have got 15 companies on the border. Is that 15 or is it 14? And if it is 15, how much do they then contribute? Because suddenly, if it's 40% of 15, or is it 40% of 14? I just wanted to get that correct, because that has got a multiplying effect and a spillover effect. Then just on that third bullet, where it says that where they're talking about the mandates and the involvement, I just wanted to remind them that we are already it was reported that we were already, I think by the third quarter or the second quarter, we were already halfway, more than halfway, over the 1.9 million man-days. So we have to just make sure, and I will get to a question later on where I will ask exactly what is the expectation of the Reserve Force. How many man-days do they foresee that we will reach in this financial year, and then obviously going forward? Because if it is a repetitive that we will use the Reserve Force as indicated, that means that 1.9 million is just not realistic. So that we will have right in the budgeting process and the planning process that we must be honest. 1.9 is not realistic. Work at a realistic budget for man-days. Then it refers to item 10 expenditure. Maybe just for everybody's refreshment on that, what does item 10 expenditure all include and provided for? Then on the next page, Chairperson, maybe not tonight, but I would request that there's a regular referring to Mzansi Home Guard. And I think we will need a proper presentation on the role and functions, the cost, the benefits, why we need a Mzansi Home Guard. Because there's no purpose in talking about a Mzansi Home Guard just to find out eventually we cannot afford it. So we must try to make out a case, as we've done with many others of our arguments with the National Treasury, that a Mzansi Home Guard is an essential cost, and that will contribute to the constitutional mandate that we've got. So my request is just that maybe not tonight that a full explanation is given, but that we try to identify an opportunity for them to brief us properly on the Mzansi Home Guard. Then, Chairperson, on slide 8, where it is referred to that PERSOL cleanup, plus minus 7,500 members who have not been called up. Can they tell us, first of all, how many Reserve Force members do we call up on a yearly basis? Not in man-days, in members. And then, how do we see what must that pool be of Reserve Force members going forward? After the cleanup, after what we need, how big must that pool be going forward? And then just on the next one, where they are talking about the utilization of reserves. In that second bullet, although it has been mentioned that budget is the actual problem, the reason given here is that no progress due to unavailability of pilots and aircraft. I know for a fact where I live in the Western Cape, many of the Reserve Force pilots have approached me. So to say that there's an unavailability of pilots, that doesn't correlate with how many Reserve Force pilots have approached me. So maybe you can just clarify that. And then in terms of the aircraft, do they have to use their own personal aircraft when they do these services? And if so, I mean, what effect will that have on our defense readiness? Because if it is small little civilian pilots, how will that contribute to this overall objective of making our country safer, especially in terms of maritime and then search and rescue and things like that? I'm just very concerned about that. And if it is budget, then we must say right from the beginning budget. The one thing also about budget, we must know how much do we actually need. So, it is good to mention this to us, but we will have to see at one or other stage what is the practical financial implication, rands and cents, so that when we sit and we negotiate or discuss it with National Treasury, that we can say, as we know, what do we need for a frigates upgrade, for a submarines upgrade? How much do we need for aircraft and things like that? We will have to come back and know exactly what we are talking about, because then we can negotiate at least from a well-informed position. On the next page, where it was referred to the inputs from the guest speaker, Mr. Heitman, I know that he has contributed also to the 2015 Defence Review, and I was just wondering whether it is possible for us to get those kind of input as well. It can be of value to us as well. That'll be much appreciated. Then, Chair, on slide 12, if I can just move to that, where it is referred to the aging force of the Reserve Force, and that we need to rejuvenate that. What is the current average age of our Reserve Force? And then when the objective to rejuvenate, from where will we rejuvenate? What is the idea and the plans? From where will we will have to rejuvenate? Is it ex-SNDF members who has just not been given a contract for regular force, or are we recruiting basically from the street? Because if we need to rejuvenate, we're talking about young people. We don't talk about people of my age, and I just need to understand that fully. When you talk about the effective management and service conditions, now all of that has got a financial implication. And whilst I appreciate the things like medical benefit, leave and remuneration and all those kind of things, again, as per a previous comment of mine, we will have to see what is the impact of that financially and what will that require. On the next conclusion page, Chair, there's also a managed limitation on man days. Now, again, in terms of a previous point of mine, we need to know exactly what we are talking about the man days, where are we at the moment, and what is envisaged going forward based on the current trajectory of deployments of Reserve Force members. Yeah, Chairperson, that is basically what I've got in mind at the moment, so that'll be much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. May I request that we take down the presentation? Mr. Rader.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good evening, all. Chair, I'm aware that I lost connection when I was talking last. I apologize for that. It kind of underlined the point about managing logistics. Yes, thank you for the presentation, General. I think that the first thing I want to mention is that you said something that triggered me a little bit, because you spoke about the system in terms of the management of availability of people, and you said that the system doesn't allow you to do X, Y, and Z, and particularly you're related to soldiers as they had passed away, and indicated that your system doesn't allow you to update your records properly, etc. Now, you are a whole brigadier general. I am a whole member of parliament, and we, as we sit here, are a whole committee of parliament. If we can't change the system, then there's a serious problem. So I think you need to tell us exactly what we need to do to fix the system, to make sure that it works for you, because we can't have a process that is hampered by a system that is poorly designed. I mean, the issue that you require a death certificate to take somebody off the system, that might be appropriate if you paying out their life insurance, but it's certainly not appropriate if you are counting your standing force or your available force. And if the IEC can manage it, using their connections into the Home Affairs database. I'm fairly sure that the South African National Defence Force can manage it on a similar basis, and get that information, from another government department. I believe that that should be incredibly easy to do, and you can't be a victim of the system. We can never claim that unless we are here to request assistance to have a system changed. So that's the first point, which leads me to the second point, because I mentioned the life insurance aspect. General, you detailed a small problem there with the 15 days, which I didn't quite understand. But if you can perhaps elaborate a little bit on that, is this a SANDF coordinated life policy that you were referring to? What are the issues with it? Is the military ombudsman or the Defence Force Service Commission assisting you with getting that matter resolved? Because I certainly don't believe that we should be having people out there who have their life insurance placed at risk when they are putting those very lives on the line for South Africa. So perhaps you can give us a little bit more on that, because that was certainly a trigger for me. And then again, just in terms of your calling up process, I really want to understand this better. So I remember in my days, going back a long time ago, as part of the Reserve Force, we were occasionally placed on standby. So when there was an imminent but unconfirmed threat, we were placed on standby. And General, I'm going back to the days of telegrams and written letters. In a day of a modern day era of electronic communications, I think this would be something fairly simple to manage and immediately, get a response from the targeted people that we were hoping to call up, and ensure the availability of people, because I think that availability is a primary issue that a Reserve Force needs to deal with. And then, of course, that then segues me nicely onto the next point, which relates to the South African medical services, reliance on doctors. And I'm sure there are many other professionals and people that are part of the Reserve Force who might require a little bit of notice or a little bit of engagement before they can merely be called up at the drop of a hat, or a parachute, as it may be. So if you can just tell me how exactly that call-up process works as well. Particularly, I think that we do have huge sympathy for our reserve forces, as you said, that they do not receive any payment when they are not in active service. And of course, I always, the gray hair you see on my head and beard relates to the comment every time somebody says that a cash and transit heist or other crime was carried out with military precision. I always wonder who trained the people involved. So, I do think we need to look after the people that form part of the Reserve Force, and do the best we can to make sure that they are suitably accommodated, and certainly when they manage to get other employment, that is taken into account. And then perhaps just to emphasize a point from the Honourable Marais relating to the Mzansi Home Guard, I think that it's actually irresponsible to be spending money, even contemplating something that is clearly unfunded at the moment, and by your own admission, General, unlikely to be funded, certainly in the medium term. Short of a massive change in the country's financial outlook and the appropriation to the Defence Department, I'm afraid that I also don't see the relevance of that in our discussion at the moment. And while it would be obviously an optimal thing, I'm not sure if it's part of Operation Prosper or Operation Corona that this is envisaged, but I think it's a very difficult thing to even contemplate at this stage. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. I see Motsomai and then Honorable Mutle. In that order, please. Honorable Motsomai.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, I just want to know something about the reserve forces. These people, they are carrying guns. These people, they are wearing uniform, South African Defense Force uniform. And these people, they cannot go to any sick bay, military clinic. They cannot go to 1 meal. Are these people, they are registered as military reserve forces? Or is it just a company or a tender of somebody who have been granted that tender? Because I think, to me, to my side, I see a danger. I see a problem when a reserve force is carrying a weapon and he's not well trained, and he cannot even go to the military hospital. When he can be shot. What's going to happen with the particular person? But wearing the military uniform. It's like the clips that is moving around where you see a person is busy showing South African National Defense Force uniform. What about the people who are carrying this uniform who are not even in a database? I just want to get an answer, a clarity on that. I think, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Mutle.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good evening. Chair, I'm more worried about the strategic objective that does not come clear out of the Indaba. My worry emanates from the challenge that the Defense Force is still sitting with, Chair, if you recall, around the calling up of Reserve Force, which resulted in that name that I cannot call, what challenge. It's part of the Reserve Force contingents that were called, and we still remain with the challenge. I thought in the main, out of Indaba, to cap those kind of challenges that have been experienced, they will come up clearly with a clear strategy how to ensure that those kind of challenges do not resurface in future. So if General Nyabo can speak to that, if they have engaged to some extent to address some of the challenges, such as the one I'm referring to. I just want to hear if they've got plans in place to deal with those kind of things and ensure that they tighten their management insofar as collapse of reserves are concerned. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we are done with the questions. I will now invite the General Nyabo to respond.
Thank you, sir. I will start with the questions from Honorable Mare. Yes, I have captured them. If He's asking whether it's still relevant to be quoting the defense review when the minister has made it clear that it should be reviewed. Yes, the minister has said that the defense review has to be reviewed, especially the parts of it that are not affordable. But the reason we always start our presentation by stating the role of the reserves as stated in the review, it's because it's still relevant today, and we don't foresee that even if the defense review is reviewed, the role of the reserves will change, because it is still as relevant today as it was in 2015. And even if the defense review is reviewed, we don't foresee that the role of the reserves will change. That is why we always start with that slide, sir. The companies are 15 and the Reserve Force members constitute 40%. Sorry, 14 is a typo. The companies are 15 that are in the borders and 40% of them are the reserves. The number of mandates that are overspent. In the past, when we presented, we were always stating exactly the number of mandates. It's just that since this presentation was mainly concentrating on the strategic part, we did not include it. But we know exactly what the trend has been with the mandates and what is anticipated for this year. For instance, the Army has already overspent on their mandates. The trend has been that we will be between 2.7 something and 2.8 when the mandates were 2.8. Hence, we are always saying that when the mandates were reduced to 1.9 by 25%, we did say that even in the DP bank, my presentation stated that if we look at the trend of how we've been utilizing and calling up reserves, it didn't make sense that we had to reduce the mandates by 25%, but we're compelled by the circumstances of the cost of employment. That is why now we've made submissions, because we realize that it's not realistic for us to reduce mandates, because even in the past, when we did not have as much commitments as we have now, we've always overspent on the mandates. The projection for this year is that we will just spend just above 2.8, even though the allocation was 1.9. As I've said, the Army has already overspent on their mandates because of the operations and the exercise. The environment, who did not overspend, what they did was to cut the mandates, even though the requirement was still there, and the activities that were done by those reserves then were put on hold. But all the services, they did state that they require more mandates. For instance, the SAMs, they use the guard for reserves. They had to overspend because they could not leave their buildings. That houses expensive medications unguarded, and they are guarded by the reserves. You are asking, so what item 10 includes? Item 10 includes all salaries, both regular force members and reserve force wages. That is where our cost of employment comes from item 10. Slide 8 of parcel cleanup. Yes, this is not impossible. It just has delayed the process. It's ongoing. We also had data integrity problems with the information that we got from CETA, because CETA manages our systems, but it's an ongoing process. It's not easy getting that certificate from Home Affairs, because we're told it's a legal issue, but the HRSS is continuing with it. It's a process that we are continuing with. It's not impossible. It's not as quick as we anticipated it to be, hence we are still performing it. The Air Reserve Squadron, the information we have on the Air Reserve Squadron is the information that is given by the Air Force. So they gave those to be challenges, but we will convey to them that you are saying there are available members who would like to serve as pilot reserves. Yes, in the past, the reserve force members who were pilots who were part of those Air Reserve Squadrons, they were utilizing their own aircraft. We will provide the inputs by Mr. Heitman. We have them in writing, because he did send us the Word document before he presented. He presented virtually, so we do have that document, and we will forward it. The current average age of a reserve force member is 45. who are we going to recruit as Reserve Force members? If there are still members who formed part of the MSDS, Military Skills Development, because they are quite young in age, who are available and interested in being reserves, yes, we will recruit those because we've already trained them when it comes to basic training. So it will be cheaper to recruit them. We will also continue with our university reserve training program, as most services have shown interest in it, because it provides us with specialists, with professionals as well. It will assist us with professionalizing the department, because we recruit university graduates in that program. Most services would like to continue with it, but they definitely cannot, because they can't afford it currently. Also, the youth, we know in our country, most of our employment is structural, which is that most graduates have skills that do not match what is required by the labor market. So even the young graduates that are unemployed, we will be recruiting those, because we're hoping to professionalize the department in the future. I think I've responded to all Mr. Murray's questions, and then Mr. Ryder. System to remove members, like I've said, yes, it's not impossible, but we've had problems with data integrity because we rely on CETA, and it was not easy to access members' death certificate from Home Affairs if not related to those members. It's not impossible, but it has slowed the process. But it's a continuous process that we do together with our members from Directorate Human Resource Service System. GLIS is the insurance policy that both regular and reserve force members have, that is deducted from our salaries. It's underwritten by Sanlam. This was resolved. I don't think we will require any intervention from ombuds, because we have a member that attends those meetings. So we had those discussions, and now they are accommodating our reserve force members. How are members called up? All services have a call-up system, so there's no third party involved. Members, reserve force members, are members of the defense force, just like regular force members. They have their systems. We know the number of reserve force members we have and the skills they possess. So depending on the requirements at the time and what we need, members will be called up by their different services, because reserve force members can only be called up through services. They are commanded by chief of the services. The Air Force has their own reserve, Navy, same, and the Army. So they have a database of all their reserve force members. When there is a requirement or operation, so they know who their reserve force members are and the skills that they possess. So they call them up directly. There is no third party involved. The requirement of Mzansi Home Guard came from the Army, because it's mostly Army that is deployed in Operation Corona. They felt that there is a need to have a component that will perform what was in the past performed by what was known as commandos. So they came with this concept of Mzansi Home Guard. But we can request the Army to come and present it to the committee. And the Honorable Mr. Mutsamai, I think your question I've also responded to. It said that reserve force members are members of the defense force. They are not called up through any intermediary company or any third party. They belong to the services. And when members of the reserve force are called up, and if they get injured while they are on duty or called up, they do get medical care. They are provided with medical care. Only when they are not called up that they cannot access the military medical care, but when they are called up, they do get medical care, especially if they get injured while on duty or while they are deployed. The existing call-up system, with regard to Mr. Mote, Honorable Mr. Mote, the current system that we have, sir, it has provision to avoid what happened in Mzumvu. Because when you call up reserve force members, there are processes in the system where you can verify their status to find out whether they are reserve force members, so that you don't keep members who are not reserve force members for more than even 3 days, and then you have to end up paying them, like what happened in Zimbabwe. Even though I don't have all the details of what happens in Zimbo. But the current existing Reserve Force collapse system, it makes provision for what happened to Mzimvubu to not happen against her. I think there was a bit of human error there, but our system does avoid for what happened there to not happen again, the current existing system. If there is a requirement, then we can present it and show how it does that. I hope I responded to all the questions, sir.
Hello? No, thank you very much, colleagues. I heard that the Reserve Force Council was appointed for 6 months, and currently we have no council in office or council members in office. And I must say, DM, that you know, I was not too happy with the way their term was renewed, because their term of office had terminated for more than a year. And so after a year or so, we learned that their term of office has been extended. I said, but how is it possible? And that you extend a term that is more than a year, that had terminated for about a year. But now we hear that they're no longer in office. Maybe it's another issue that the minister needs to quickly look at. Before we finish, we end this term. This term is finishing sometime in May next year, April, May. No chief reserves, no Reserve Force Council, no permanent SecDef, no permanent CFO, and we currently have the DG for DMV on suspension. So I really plead that all these vacancies be attended to before we close this term. So I wouldn't want to say anything except to say that we're happy that the Indaba 2 has happened, and the ideas as to how we can better our reserve force, and in the process improve the conditions of service of the members of the reserve force. And so I think I will now check if the Chief of Staff wants to say anything in addition before I ask the DM to close the discussion. I don't know if the Chief of Staff is still in the meeting. Can you hear me, colleagues?
Yes, we can, Chair. There's a hand from Brigadier Niabu, Chair.
Oh, yes, General Niabu.
Thank you, sir. The Chief of Staff just called me to say I must convey that the system has just kicked him out. He's trying to get back in.
Okay, that's fine. All right, maybe we can close it at that, but before we call it a day. Let me ask the Deputy Minister to give his final comment and wind up the discussion on the matter.
Excuse me, Honorable Chair and Honorable Committee members. Thank you for the contribution of the oversight to the dialogue on the effort to put in place a new reserve force system for our defense force in South Africa. From my side, Chair, I want to say that it is still possible that to this presentation we have shared with the oversight tonight, the department should favor the committee with a summary report of the milestones of the dialogue around fashioning a new reserve force system from the time this was started with in 2019, when the first Indaba was convened. I think it was around September 2019. And by milestones, I'm referring, Chair, to things like information on what the Reserve Force Indaba 1 focused on and what its outcomes were. The outcomes of Indaba, the focus of Indaba 1 and the outcomes of that gathering. And then provide as well in relation to Indaba 2, Reserve Force Indaba 2, what the dialogue of Indaba 2 focused on and what were the recommendations of Indaba 2. And what the responsibility, lastly, what the purpose of Indaba 3 is going to be, so that the expectations should be clear to everyone of that, what that Indaba 3 must do. There is, of course, a point that the Indaba 2 dialogue appreciated that the department needs to convene a workshop of the department before they convene Indaba 3, so that at that workshop, position papers on the different aspects of this system that we want to design for the future, that are a critique of the present practices in relation to this system, that those papers be discussed and confirmed as the positions of the department. And then, only after that, can they convene Indaba 3, where the generals, the chiefs of the services and divisions can sign off what is the proposal the Department of Defense is putting up as our future reserve force system. I feel a summary, not a long thing, a summary that spells out that process milestones will assist, so that the oversight work going forward must know where this matter has been put at, how far it has been taken forward, and what has been deposited as confirmed and agreed solution for those who will come in to then know where to start and how to proceed forward. I feel that that is important. It is important for the second point. For the second point, which I also want to share with the committee, which is that the Indaba 1, the dialogue around fashioning a new reserve force system was coordinated or led, let me put it that way. It was led by the former chief of the Defense Reserves, an incumbent we do not have in office now, and an office that has been in a state of flux in a way, and the Reserve Force Council chair. And that Reserve Force Council is not in place as we speak. And as a result of the absence of the two incumbents, I have observed that the staff work that has been going on around this designing of the new Reserve Force system has not been or has not had the ownership the way it should be. And at the Reserve Force Indaba 2 weeks ago, we actually agreed that a recommendation must be made, but of course it will be for the Military Command Council to decide, or the Chief of the Defense Force to decide that this work, that these work streams that were established by Reserve Force Indaba 1, their work must be reported to the Reserve Force Board, because it appeared the Reserve Force Board may actually be the appropriate leadership body where this staff work around the defense reserves is reported. But we were clear that of course, it's a judgment call that should be left to where it belongs, to the Military Command Council. Lastly, the third point that I thought I should make, Chair, is that the department's officials, they have done a lot of work around the different areas of our reserve force system, which are troubling us as we speak. Whether you are talking the recruitment into our defense reserves and the rejuvenation of the community, or whether you are talking about the one force concept application in relation to what is due to the reserves and what is due to the regulars, whether in relation of training or in relation of support regarding matters like, for instance, health, medical, support. All of those things, there are things that there are solutions that are being proposed. But we should be clear that they are not in themselves the new reserve force system. They are only components of practices administratively of how the system must function. And they are appropriate and they are relevant now to resolve the current problems, and they are still relevant and appropriate to be utilized in the future reserve force system. I thought that the awareness at the level of the oversight committee will be important for the department to flag and for the oversight committee to confirm or to advise otherwise. I thought that I should make just those broad points share through you to the committee, but the comments made by members of the committee they have been noted. The Umzimvubu experience, I know that the temptation may be to us that it's a reflection of the weakness of the system. But the Board of Inquiry has discovered that that was a deviation even from what should have been just normal, sane way of doing things. And that is why there are consequences that must be meted in relation to what happened at Mzimbu. I will leave it there, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, DM. I agree with you. I'm sure the committee will agree with you as well, that we need a compilation of all these discussions and the outcomes rising from Indaba 1 to Indaba 2, proceeding to Indaba 3. Like you are saying, when Indaba 1 happened, you are the chief of reserves with wealth of experience, and who's not in office when who is not in office or was not in office when Indaba 2 took place. Same thing with the chair of the Reserve Force, who was there and was not in office when this happened. And I can also cite the chief of the Defense Force. It was under General Shoke. And you had different, you had other chiefs of services in the Air Force, General Msimang, in the Navy, Vice Admiral Hlongwane, and in the Army. I think in the Army was
General Mason.
Yes, no, in fact, it was General Yam, if I'm not mistaken. BK was then moved to Chief of Staff. But all of those are no longer in office, and they're not in office when this happened. There's a likelihood that when the third Indaba takes place, we have a new set of leadership in the Defense Force. Unless we document this, all this, and coming from the experience of all these senior officers in the Defense Force, we will lose this institutional memory in the process. And I'm sure the team really taking note of that. Really, thank you very much for that. Indeed, would love, we wish that the summary, when it is already, be shared with us in black and white, because we would want to carry some of these things that we are mentioning into our legacy report for the new committee in the 7th administration, for it to see the amount of work that this committee has covered, and then determine how then they would want to move forward. No, thank you very much for your presentation. Colleagues, let me thank General, the Chief of Staff, and General Niaba for their presentation tonight. We still would want to follow up with a letter to the Chief, in fact to the Minister, just for an explanation on the post of the Chief Reserves. It's this committee that was saying this position has been vacant for a very long time. I think it was vacant in 2021, if I'm not mistaken. And we kept asking, when is this position going to be filled? We were told it was filled. But now we're told it's vacant again. So I'm sure that the position will be filled so that we don't have a vacancy. All of these things that are being mentioned It will remain lofty, it will remain ideas until someone has really incorporated them into a plan, and because as we said, it's all about the betterment of our own forces, especially the reserve force. All right, colleagues, I don't know, is there anything, colleagues, that I'm leaving out before I release the team?
Chairperson,
I think
there's anything.
Chairperson,
Yes,
now
sorry,
I think
General,
you have
Chairperson, my apology.
General,
I was logged out, and I've been told the chairperson wanted me to come on board. And my apology for that. It logged me out at the last minute. But I need to say, it is good courtesy in the military that when the the deputy minister has spoken, that all of us align to that. So therefore, pardon me, Chair. Next time I'll round up. And today the deputy minister has spoken. My apology. Thank you, sir.
No, thank you very much, General. Deputy Minister, thank you very much. And colleagues, I think I'm sure the next item it doesn't require DOD and the defense. I think it's minutes, if I'm not mistaken. Deputy DM, thank you very much and Chief of Staff, thank you very much.
Honorable Chair and honorable members, thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson and honorable members. Thank you.
Thanks, OS. Thank you so much. Colleagues, let's quickly move to the minutes of the meeting. Do you have minutes? I think we do. How many sets?
This is the only set, Chair.
Set. All right, colleagues, this meeting of the
Chairperson,
26th.
we are outperforming ourselves with approving minutes this time around. My goodness gracious me.
I can see that. Colleagues, it's minutes of the 26th of September. So it's engagement with the DOD and the Chief of Human Reserves on their strategy. We also received a letter, or we dealt with the letter of employment. We also received an invitation from Milco. I would want to say one or two words on Milco, and then we consider the minutes. So this is the attendance. Please pass, move. The attendance correction, if there are any. It's page 2, corrections. Page 3. Page 4. And page 5. Oh, and page 6. Colleagues, these are the minutes. Are there any corrections? I wish to present them for adoption. Can I get a move and a seconder?
I move for the adoption of the minutes, Chair. It's possible.
Madam Nkosi moves. Thank you very much, Honorable Nkosi. Seconded by?
I second, Honorable Chair.
Honorable Temple seconds. Thank you very much. I said I would want to say, make a comment on the Milco invitation. Nandipa, we had put in an application. The cost was about 3,000 Rand, and we received a response that our application is turned down, and because they're trying to save money, there is a circular that says all oversight visit strictly prohibited, and I'm sure I circulated the circular. They only allow meetings of committees. So on that score, they are refusing us. Well, the application was turned down, but that we got from the staff in the chair's office, and I said sometimes, you know, it's not proper courtesy that when you've written to the chair and the response, you've signed a letter from the chair of a committee to, you know, a leader of the, you know, of parliament, leader in parliament, and you get the response not from him, but from an official. I said, in a situation like that, I can't convey such to members, and you know, because it's not proper courtesy. It's not courtesy. In fact, it's not courtesy that I should get that, and because if it was chair of the house, I was going to get back to him to say, look, we are not meeting. The last time we had a physical meeting, I don't know, it's many years back, and they were meeting online and were serving on catering budget. And the catering is usually between 4,000 and 6,000 rand. And what is 3,000 rand just to transport members to honor this invitation? But I couldn't have a discussion with him because the message came from staff in his office. So that's the situation. And because we are also members of the portfolio committee as well, it's going to affect our visit to Lehotla. And the application has not been approved on the same basis. So I thought I should just let you know that for all future oversight visits will not be permitted. And thanks. Mr. Murray?
Chairperson, thank you for conveying this to us. Now, you haven't sent us a letter in that regard, but anyway, thank you for conveying us. I fully agree with your sentiments. I support you in that. Because, I mean, what the staff of the chair don't understand is the importance of that visit to Milcourt, for instance, and how we have fought for that, for UAVs, and the use of why we are still fighting for that, for the use of that by the South African Air Force. So this is not a jollification. And you know, a nice trip where we have just got benefits. This is not at all. This is a culmination of what we have fought for and worked hard for. So it is a pity that they have such a short-sighted view on that. Similar with Luatla. I mean, we have often said in the past to the chief and the leaders of the Defence Force, you know, you should invite us. We must be part and parcel of this. And I mean, if they think it's fun to drive from Kimberley or Uppington to Luatla and back, I mean, that's not the nicest way to spend your day. You know, so many hours on the road. But I suppose that this is now going to affect the oversight visit to the Kimberley area of the portfolio committee as well, which we are scheduled for later this month. So yeah, it's a pity. I think we have saved a hell of a lot of money to Parliament, the way that we are meeting and the way that we have spent money So I think we can keep our heads high, that we haven't wasted any money. Everything that we have done, in my opinion, my humble opinion, was proper investment, and it was value for money, what we have achieved. So yes, I share your sentiments. It's a pity, but I mean that's unfortunately how it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, that is the situation. Nandipa, do you want to say one or two things from your interaction with your...
Yes, Chair. Yesterday, Chair, the NCOP House Chair did approve the application, and it's still with the NCOP Chief Whip. And from the NA side, the colleague in Mr. Frolic's office requested that I amend the application and just include the times of the visit. So I did that, and he hasn't come back to me yet, Chair.
So that's the latest.
Yes, Chair.
On which visit is that? On which visit is that?
The Milko.
Oh, the Milko. The Milko. Okay.
Yes. Yes, Milko. You know, now I'm happy because I didn't want to take a no from a staff when the application was addressed to the chair. And they are also calling Brian in relation to the Watla. They are asking, what is the chair saying? I said, no, I've not written to the secretary. I've written to the chair, house chair. The chair must respond in black and white. If it's no, it's no. If it is yes, it's yes. So it means that even that one too, it may change. I thought I should just convey this because yeah.
Well done. Well done.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
No,
well
I'm
done,
happy that there's a. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm happy that they're reviewing their stance on this one. I hope they'll also review their stance on the other one as well. Colleagues, thank you very much. And I think that takes us to the end of the meeting. Thabo has been too quiet. I don't know why. The meeting is...
Chairperson, this is, just want to wish you a very good trip next week to Dubai, where you're going to represent us all. Enjoy all the glitter and the lights and everything that is beautiful. Just be cautious about the women in Dubai when you're all on your own. Eh?
Thank you so much.
Your chair.
I'm like, yes, Motapo.
Chair.
Yes, Motapo.
Please bring us nice goodies from Dubai. We wish you well.
I must tell you. I must tell
Only
you,
gold.
I'm going to be
Only
grounded.
gold.
That's a vibe. That's a vibe I'm getting. It looks as though it's going to be canned. Colleagues, thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.